In this video, I'll be showing you the first 15 things that you should do if you've just got your brand new iPhone 15. Now, these tips and tricks are going to help you get the most out of this phone's features, performance, as well as battery life, and I'm also going to throw in plenty of useful tips and tricks along the way. And as always, I will leave all the purchase links down in the description. Alright, so to start, let's take a look at some battery health and battery life-saving tips and tricks, as I often get questions about these subjects, and I think these are very important to make sure your phone lasts as long as possible. Now, recently, with the latest iOS update, you actually have a new way to preserve your battery health. So to do this, we're going to activate a new setting. So first, we're going to jump into Settings, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find battery. And in here, by the way, you can also toggle to show your battery percentage. I like to have this on to give a more accurate view of my battery life. But if we go ahead and scroll down, we have now two tabs. We have battery health as well as charging optimization. So first, let's take a look at battery health. Now, this is going to show either as normal or as in need of service. And as long as your battery health is above 80%, it's going to show as normal. This means you'll have a good amount of capacity for your battery. Once it dips below 80%, this is when Apple typically suggests changing the battery. This would usually be, say, at around the 2 to 3 year mark. To get a more detailed view on what specifically your battery health is at, you can look at the maximum capacity. This really is another word for battery health. So currently it's at 100%. This means you can use the full capacity of your battery. And again, once it dips below 80%, they recommend suggesting to change it. And beneath that, we also get to actually see the cycle count. Now, the cycle count will reflect how often your phone has been fully charged and fully depleted. So the higher the cycle count, of course, the longer your phone has been used. And typically, the lower your maximum capacity and the worse the battery health. You'll typically start to see this around 500 or so charges in. So your phone should last you for a good number of charges before you see those effects wear in. But this is a good way to monitor, especially if you are, say, buying a phone used. This will give you an idea of how often it has been used. You also get beneath that an option, or a status rather, for when the battery was first activated. This will also show you whether the battery has been replaced or not. Again, useful to know if you're buying a phone used. But now back to the battery health setting, if we go back, and then now we're going to tap on charging optimization. So if we tap into this, we have two options. We either have optimized battery charging or 80% limit. Now, 80% limit, what that's going to do is it's literally going to limit your battery capacity up to 80%. So we'll never charge above that, and this is going to go a long way to limiting wear on your battery. Now, personally, I don't like to use this feature as I don't want to sacrifice 20% of my battery life. So instead, I prefer to use optimized battery charging. And this is a feature that will essentially learn the habits of how you use and charge your phone. So for example, let's say I plug my phone in at night before going to sleep at say 11:30 p.m. It's then going to charge all the way up to 80% and then wait with the remaining 20% till closer to when I wake up and typically unplug my phone, say 6 or 7 a.m. This way, it's going to stagger the charge and not charge your phone as fast, which overnight is not a problem. And as a result, it's going to produce less heat. And then that is going to then limit the wear, or rather lessen the wear on your battery, helping preserve battery health. So of all the settings here, 80% limit is really only for the diehards. I think for most people, optimized battery charging is the perfect balance of getting that extra benefit for your battery health while not limiting the functionality of your battery. Actually, while we're on the subject of battery health and charging, let me quickly go over what the best way is to charge your phone, as I get a lot of questions about slow or fast chargers, wired versus wireless, and the best way to charge your phone, if your aim is to maximize or rather preserve your battery health, is to use a slower or lower watt charger. So that would be a 5, maybe a 10 watt charger, and to use a wired connection as opposed to a wireless charger. Now, the reason for this all comes down to heat, as higher watt or faster chargers, while they will charge your phone faster, will produce more heat, and wireless charging as opposed to wired charging requires more energy and therefore also produces more heat. And heat will be the #1 factor to what degrades your battery health over time. So my suggestion is to overnight use a slower charger, as at this point you won't need your phone to charge very fast anyway, and to use a wired connection. So 10, maybe a 5 watt charger if you can find them, and use a wired connection overnight. Then of course during the day, if you need the occasional wireless charge or quick top up, that is okay. However, most of the time, since you charge your phone at night, at least most likely, at that moment it's best to use that lower watt charger with a wired connection for your battery health. Great, so now that we know how to preserve your battery health, the best settings to use, and the best way to charge your phone, let's take a look at the top 2 battery saving tips that I have. And the first will be to limit the number of notifications coming into your phone. So to do this, we're going to go into settings and then jump into notifications. And then here, if we scroll down, we're going to be able to turn on or off any application, whether we want them or not want them to send us notifications. Now, limiting the notifications is really good for two reasons. First, of course, for your battery health, as every time a notification comes in, your phone vibrates, your screen will probably turn on, and you may get a sound on the speaker as well. And while one notification won't destroy your battery life, if you have 100 coming in per day, that really adds up. So if you can limit that 100 to 50 or say 60 to 30, that's going to make a really big difference that will add up over time. So my suggestion is to go through all your applications and see which you do and which you don't want to send you notifications. So let's say, for example, Minecraft here, a game, love to play it, but I don't need it to bother me throughout the day. So I'm going to tap on that application and then disable notifications entirely, meaning my phone will not go off with any Minecraft notifications going forward. And this brings me to the second reason why it is great to limit their notifications, is it's also great for your mental health. You don't want your phone to go off throughout the day, bothering you in whatever task you're doing. Instead, I'd rather have my phone only go off when it is something important, say a message from a loved one, calls, or find my notifications, things like that. I don't need notifications from shopping apps or games to be bothering me throughout the day. The second really big battery saving tip I have has to do with background app refresh. So if we go back into settings, then tap on general, and then we're going to go into background app refresh. Here, just like with notifications, you want to kind of do an audit, scroll through all of your applications and see which you do or don't want running in the background. The more applications you'll have running in the background, the more battery this will take over time. And by default, all of these will be on. So I suggest you turn off any application that doesn't need to run in the background. Again, things like your shopping apps, maybe certain utility applications, finance apps perhaps, or discount or coupon apps, anything like that don't need to be running. Certain apps, however, do, because you do have the option up here to turn it off for all. This I wouldn't suggest, as I do suggest you keep it on for certain applications like your maps applications, perhaps certain social media apps or messaging apps that you always want to be ready when you're using them. But as you can see, I would say just about 50, maybe even 60% of my apps are just turned off. Great, so now that we've looked at battery health and battery saving tips and tricks, let's move on to some features. And the first of which I want to show you is how to access the one-handed keyboard on your iPhone. And this is particularly great even on the regular size iPhone 15, where it can sometimes be a little bit tricky to reach the other end of the keyboard, especially if you've got your phone in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. It's really convenient to make the keyboard just a little bit smaller. So how do we do this? Well, to do this, we're going to press and hold on the globe you'll have here in the lower left of your screen. This could also be an emoji icon if you don't have multiple keyboards set up like I do. And then when you press and hold that, you get this secondary menu where you can then choose to swipe the keyboard over to the left or right. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to move it over to the right. And as you can see, it's literally going to shrink the keyboard by say 15% or so and make it much easier to reach the other end of the key. And to expand the keyboard, simply tap on the arrow to bring it to full screen mode once again. And this brings us to the Messages app, where I want to show you how to edit and also unsend a message in iMessage. So let's say here I have a conversation going and I'm going to send this message, but let's say I made a mistake or I want to change a part of this message. After sending it, what I can do is press and hold on that message, and then the secondary menu will appear. And then from here, I can tap on edit to change any part of the message. So let's say instead of 10 minutes, I'm going to be 15 minutes, a little bit optimistic there with my ETA. I can then press on the check mark on the right, and as you can see, that message will then be updated. Now, it is important to note that the recipient won't be able to see the edit history. However, they will be able to see that the message has been edited with this little edit icon there. Now, let's say I want to remove or unsend the message entirely. I simply press and hold, and then under the same menu, I'm going to tap on undo send, and the message will then disappear from the thread. And again, the recipient won't be able to see that message if it had been, or if they open the chat rather, after it had been removed. Now, it's important to note that both editing as well as unsending a message can be done for up to 15 minutes after originally sending the text. So if you do make a mistake, make sure to catch it quick. Now, Notes on your iPhone is a great way to store quick information if you need to quickly note something down. However, I don't recommend using it for very sensitive information, like, for example, banking details or even personal details. However, if you still have a note that you want to protect in some way rather than just have it be visible in the app, you do have the option to password protect your note. So to give you an example here, if we go into the Notes app here, I have my top secret iPhone tips and tricks note. What I can do is press and hold on that note, and then I'll have the option to lock the note. And right now, as you can see, we have the unlocked sign there. The note will be locked. So if I go ahead and close my Notes app, I'm going to go ahead and quit it here, bring it up again, and let's open up this iPhone tips and tricks note. And as you can see, it's going to require Face ID to unlock, or I can also enter in my password from my phone to open it. So this is a great way to protect your notes. Again, I still wouldn't store the most sensitive information in Notes, but it still adds an extra layer of protection. You can see that little lock icon here to show that it's unlocked. Simply tap it again to lock it once more. Now, I want to talk about Siri. Siri is great on my iPhone. I love to use it to quickly look something up or set a reminder, start a timer, something like that. But how you use Siri really matters, especially when it comes to battery life. So let me show you the best way to use Siri on your iPhone. So to do this, we're first going to go into settings, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find Siri. There it is, Siri and search. And by default, listen for, I won't say these activation phrases to trigger your Siris, but if you say either of these, it's then going to automatically bring up Siri. And this is really useful. However, this will take a lot of battery over time, as your phone will be constantly listening even when the display is off for either of these activation phrases. So my suggestion is to instead turn this off and instead use trigger Siri by pressing and holding the side buttons. As you can see, I press and hold the side button, Siri will then come up, and it works equally well. Just won't be listening constantly for that activation phrase, so it'll save you a lot of battery, and in my opinion, also results in far fewer accidental triggers. For example, if I say seriously, I don't know about you, but that will often trigger my Siri for some reason. So turning that feature off entirely and just using the good old-fashioned side button is, in my opinion, the best way to use Siri. I want to briefly talk about the App Store. Now, I know this doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but trust me, these settings will have a major impact on how your phone utilizes storage as well as mobile data. So these things are very important. So I do suggest you stick around and just briefly go through some of these settings as they are really important. So to do this, let's go into settings. And then we're going to scroll down to where we find App Store. Now, first, we can go ahead and turn on or off automatic app downloads. Now, my suggestion is to turn this off, as this means if, say, I download an app on another phone or my iPad or even my Apple Watch, it's then not automatically going to download that app on my phone too. There are certain apps I like to have on all my devices, but the vast majority of them I don't want on all of my devices taking up storage. So in my opinion, I would suggest turning this off. A setting I suggest you turn on, though, is automatic updates. Oftentimes apps will come out with updates for bug fixes or perhaps new features. You're going to want these as soon as you can, in my opinion. So this way it will automatically download these updates overnight. And the same thing goes for in-app content. Now, if we go ahead and scroll down, again, make sure that your mobile data automatic downloads is off, and this is going to save you a lot of data. This means that your automatic downloads will only take place when you're at home and connected to Wi-Fi, so not just your app downloads, but also things like your app updates. And then secondly here, oh yeah, this one's great, in-app ratings and reviews. Don't get me wrong, I like to leave ratings or reviews for certain applications if I really like them, or apps that I may have some constructive feedback for, but I don't want the app to ask me every time I open it. So turning this feature off will disable that ability, and the app won't be asking you to rate the app. By the way, have I asked you to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel? No, I'm just joking, but I would really appreciate it. So definitely make sure you turn this feature off too. And lastly, we have offload unused apps. Now, if you have an app on your phone that you don't use very often, what will happen is if you have this feature on, your phone will then automatically delete the app. It will save the app data, but it will delete the app itself. So next time you want to open it, you'll have to then first re-download it. Now, this is useful if, say, you are really low on storage, but I would suggest keeping this feature off and instead manually deleting that application yourself, as the last thing you want is to be out somewhere. For example, let's say you're stuck somewhere, you want to use Uber, you haven't used it for a while. Oh, you don't have the app anymore because of this offload feature, so you have to first wait to download it. So in my opinion, I would suggest just making sure that you know roughly what's on your phone, and if you are low on storage, to just delete those apps yourself, as opposed to your phone do it automatically without you knowing which apps are deleted until you try to go open them. One of the biggest new features with the iPhone 15 is the dynamic island, which is a great way to quickly see app info at a glance. What I want to show you here is just give you some examples of how this feature works and how to use it. So, for example, within the music app, what I can do is go ahead and play a song. I can't put it on speaker, unfortunately, but what I can do here is not only will it show the album artwork and show that the music is playing, if I actually tap and hold on it, the dynamic island will expand. And as you can see, I'm then able to scrub through the song to skip to a certain part, play or pause it. And what is really cool is I can also bring in an additional app. So for example, in the clock, let's go ahead and set a timer. If I go ahead and press start, swipe back to the home screen, you'll see I now have two apps essentially running in the dynamic island. So I can tap and hold to still keep an eye on my music here, but I can also press and hold on the little timer icon to see the status of my timer. And what's even better, or my favorite feature really of the dynamic island, is the ability to quickly switch between apps. As you can see, I can tap between them to very quickly go from app to app. So really useful, especially if you're multitasking. You can also use this for things like seeing the departure time for a flight, or say the ETA for your food delivery, for your car, or your taxi, whatever. So really useful to have this, all this information right here, always accessible in the dynamic island. Now, let's jump into the Photos app, where I want to show you some really cool tips and tricks, particularly when it comes to editing photos. So do you ever have a photo and zoom in and think, oh, I wish it was cropped just like this? Well, now you can. You have a new little icon here on the top right. So if I zoom into exactly where I want it, I can then tap on crop. And as you can see, it's going to then crop to exactly where I had the image framed on my screen. So just a little bit quicker, easier way, and also a more precise way to quickly crop your photos. What is also neat is with the iPhone 15, your phone will now also capture the depth data in your photo. And this means you can turn any photo into a portrait photo. So you can see here we have this little portrait icon here. What we can do is tap on edit. And now we have this little portrait mode here where I can actually adjust the level of depth after taking the photo. And this is really cool. You can see we got a nice blurry background. And what is even cooler, if I go ahead and zoom in here, I can actually change the focus point too. So I can put the focus instead on the building behind me, my scarf, or then bring it back to my face. And again, you can change the level of depth. Typically, I think the midpoint is usually the sweet spot where you get a little bit of depth, but it's not overblown either. So this is a great way to just add an additional layer of editing to your photo. Another area where this can be really useful, say you have a group shot and you want the focus to be on a specific person, you can then tap to make sure that the right person is in focus. Now, this next part of the video is arguably the most important. We're going to talk about both privacy as well as security. And these days, more than ever, we put so much important and sensitive information on our phones, from our personal details to our communications, our banking, etc. So it's really important that you know what these essential privacy and security settings are set to and that they are set correctly. So let's start off with making your phone more private. So first, let's take a look at location services. So let's jump into the settings app here, and then we're going to scroll to where we find privacy and security, and then tap on location services. Now here we have the option to turn off location services entirely. This is something I don't recommend you do, as there are certain applications that do need your location to function properly, like for example a Maps app. What is important though is that you recognize all the applications that have access to your location, and also that you've determined that they actually need it. So beneath here, if we scroll down, we'll see all the applications that either have asked or will ask to gain access to your location. And to the right of that, you're going to find what setting that is set to. So it's going to be either while using, never, or always. And always is one that is really crucial. You want to look at very closely. So let's say I'm going to pick on Instagram a little bit here. If we go on Instagram, you can set this to always. And what this means is that Instagram will always have access to your location. It's very easy to accidentally grant this without really knowing what you're doing. But if you do see always here and next to any of the applications in your location services, honestly, I suggest you don't allow that. I don't think there's any application that realistically always needs to have access to your location. The ones that do should always be set to while using. So the same thing goes for Instagram. Instead, I prefer to only set it to while I'm using the app if I want to tag a location or something like that. And if you want to take it even further when it comes to privacy, you also have the option whether to or not to allow the application to have access to your precise location. So for Instagram, I think that's a great example. I prefer to turn this off. If I'm on holiday somewhere, I may want to tag the city or the town that I'm in, but they don't need to know the street name, for example. So instead, I choose to turn this off, and you can do this for every application that has requested access to your location. So I open up another one here. Again, you want to avoid that always setting unless you really know what you're doing. My suggestion though is to not have it set to always. And if there's an application in here, say that you don't think needs access to your location, let's say for example Shazam, I don't think it needs to. I don't see why it would. Just go ahead and turn on never, and then it will not have access to your location. And we can go back here, and we're essentially going to do the same with every part of your phone. I'm not going to show you all of them, but two of the other ones that I really recommend you go through. First, of course, our location, the one that we looked at just now. But secondly, is also going to be your camera as well as your microphone. As here too, like with location, it's going to show you all the apps that have requested access to your camera. You can go ahead and turn on or off as you wish, right, like so. And what is also neat is if we go into photos, for example, you also have the option to have limited access or to have full access to your library. So you can see for third-party apps, like for example, Instagram again, or eBay, I have limited access. So to only allow specific photos rather than all of my photos and videos. And I think that's also a setting you really want to go through and make sure it's set to how you want it. The last thing in this menu I want to show you is here under tracking, where you want to make sure that this setting is off. Now, if you have applications, say a new application you've downloaded from the App Store, you open it up and it will ask you whether it will allow you to track that application or not. Instead of ever getting that prompt, turning this feature off entirely won't even allow the application to ask you to be tracked. So that is definitely the way to go. So make sure you turn this off and apps won't be tracking you. Now we're going to move right from privacy over to security. Now let's make the phone more secure. So first we're going to jump into settings, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find Face ID and passcode. Just going to type in your passcode. Here we go. So first in this menu, we're going to scroll down to where we find require attention for Face ID. And this one here is really important, as this is going to mean that not only does Face ID need to see your face to unlock your phone or to, for example, authenticate a payment or autofill your password, it's also going to mean that it requires attention, meaning you have to make eye contact with your phone. And you can test this. If say, for example, you are facing your phone, but your eyes are looking to the left, it won't unlock. And that's what this require attention for Face ID option is. So I definitely suggest you turn that on. It's just going to be an additional layer of security. Now, this next section is super important, and that is this section here, which is called allow access when locked. In other words, what do you want your phone to be able to do while it is locked? Now, I think most people, myself included, is not a lot. If my phone is locked, let's say on a table somewhere or something like that, or say if it ever gets stolen or lost, I wouldn't want anyone to be able to access anything of importance. So for example, my notifications, wouldn't want that shown. Siri, no. Things like accessing the wallet or even plugging in accessories like a computer, you wouldn't want any of that to be activated. The only exceptions I make are for things like the lock screen widgets, as well as the live activities and the home control. This means that my widgets, you can see I've got a few here, will still be up to date, but this here is okay to run. But you can see everything else I have pretty much turned off. All the important things are off, and I highly recommend you do the same, as I have some people I know that have most of these things on, and I always tell them like, hey, make sure you check this setting here and make sure you turn off, because this means that anyone with your phone, even without your password, will, for example, be able to access Siri to respond to a message or to make a call, access your wallet, things like that. You want to make sure that this is all off. All right, so those are the first 10 things that you should do if you've just got your iPhone 15. If this video was helpful to you, please leave a like and also subscribe. And for more tips and tricks, be sure to check out my in-depth iPhone 15 Ultimate Guide to truly unlock the full potential of this great phone. I'll leave that video linked on screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.